Hello and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. Just a couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. At any time during the event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page. Also, to ask questions throughout all the sessions, simply type into the Q&A chat and we'll address your questions at the end of each session. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Michelle Hassendox, Global Functional Lead for the Office of the CFO at SAP. We are so excited to have Michelle with us for a thought leadership presentation titled Mixing Intelligent Automation, Great Process Design, and the Most Comprehensive Financial Truth into the Right Financial Transformation Cocktail. Welcome, Michelle. Over to you.
Thank you so much for the nice intro, and happy to be here, of course, with all of you. Let's say first of all, happy greetings from Germany, where I currently am. And of course, I can throw in some early Christmas wishes at the same time. And why not wish for the right financial transformation cocktail for your organization? Let's say mixing indeed as intelligent automation, great process design, and basically really an end-to-end financial and environmental truth in order to make that work. Let me get started. And of course, there's a disclaimer because we might be looking into a couple of elements which are not 100% available right now. But anyway, I'll approach this, from a kind of an end-to-end perspective on finance, being an ex-CFO myself and a manager in accounting in the past. Now switch to SAP. 8 years. I'd like to basically start from really the starting point, and that is actually the role of finance. And like we all know, that in the past we were all or any finance professional was a lot of the time spending on operational activities. Of course, that is something which we still need to do, but actually what the rest of the organization is expecting from us is really as the key person or key team, I should say, to help plan and steer the business into the right direction. That being said, of course, we need to still make sure that we are compliant with all kinds of regulations out there, because otherwise we can start creating value and have great ideas on how to execute everything, and automating the hell out of a lot of the operational activities. But then, if we are not compliant, then that story doesn't keep going. Of course, let's also not forget, about the increasing importance of, working capital, about making sure that you have, a clear and sound cash conversion cycle, that you need to also take care of, all of the related treasury, FX, and other activities. And actually, from the quote to cash perspective, what we have seen happening lately, what I've seen also happening often, lately when talking to a lot of organizations, is that there's a lot of innovation going on in the way companies are going to market, the way they offer their services, their projects, their products into the market, and which of course also has an impact from a finance perspective, because the way you bill might change. There's a clear move into subscription businesses. Like if you think about automotive, the mobility as a service, rather than just selling cars, you basically keep them on your balance sheet, but still at the same time you want to analyze, what the financial performance is, which is coming out of that. Not only that, but also the way to bill, the way you can manage or should manage your receivables. All of that, of course, is very important. Now, one of the reasons, of course, why this evolution is happening is because of a lot of different business drivers. I don't want to bother you or bore you, I would say, with all of those elements. I think everybody, every, really professional finance person knows this is happening. So that we need to take care of, handling and tackling these elements. I'd rather, focus, logically speaking, on the technology drivers and how, based on a couple of elements, including, the cloudification of ERP systems, making them much more open and easier to deploy, and giving you a lot of easier access to latest innovations can help, let's say, addressing all of those challenges, as well as, let's say, the aspect of business AI, which is, of course, something which I can't get around when talking about, let's say, the technology evolution, let's say, in the context of finance, of the finance function. And that being said, of course, that automatically leads me also to the importance of data and making sure that you have, let's say, a sound baseline, let's say, a single access to all of the relevant financial information, which actually refer to as our business data fabric, which actually is not just finance only, because of course, this evolution of sustainability, for which, let's say, everybody's also looking at the finance team within the organization. And of course, if we need to address all of those elements, it is really complex, because actually of the office of the CFO, as we call it, so the entire finance team is involved across all business activities. Let's say the whole sourcing, source to pay process, all the way onto the other side in the lead to cash area, which I already mentioned. Of course, let's say, bridging their financial operations, managing your payables, your receivables, of course, all in view of, let's say, the compliance requirements, making sure that we're tracking down everything, let's say, in our accounting books. And then on top of that, also making sure that we have a clear view on, let's say, how to plan and analyze, how to really steer the business, which might even be, let's say, well, not necessarily the most important, but let's say the area with most. Of course, like, I could talk for half an hour on this slide, but actually, I'd like to simplify it a little bit down, and let's say to basically continue on how technology can help, let's say, finance professionals today. And the interesting thing is that at SAP, we've been rethinking this, let's say, already 10 years back in the meantime, let's say around 2015, or I should even say a little bit earlier than that, where we've been really investing a lot of effort in trying to combine the three key areas that are on the agenda of the CFO, starting with actually the aspect of value creation, making sure that you can really help the rest of the organization to effectively steer your business. That's where planning comes in, where reporting comes in, but actually the entire enterprise performance management, let's say, process as we see it, comes in. That can only be done, of course, if we can really lower the cost of execution, lower also the time spent in the process execution, in your financial operations, and so on and so forth. And of course, we need to be compliant, right? If we're not, we're just not doing a good job at protecting all of the value that we just have been creating, not just from a compliance perspective, but also, let's say, well, making sure that all of the value is not being eaten up by the tax authorities. So also there, of course, we need to think of, let's say, how to make that happen. Now, of course, tackling all of these aspects in detail, impossible to do in the time we have today. So I'd like to actually focus on two elements. I'd say, first of all, in, let's say, the endeavor to get to a situation, to get to a technological basis, let's say a flexible finance platform to support finance professionals out there. We, let's say, have been really investing a lot in making sure that we can cater for all of these activities based on this single business foundation, a single financial and environmental truth, because, of course, the growing importance of ESG, of sustainability, in other words. But yeah, even if we basically do that, and that's actually what we've been able to reach already to do, and let's say today, and I'll give a couple of, let's say, very specific examples on that, it still doesn't fly if, let's say, from an end user perspective, from a finance professional perspective, we don't get a single access point to all of my finance and risk priorities, whether it's about the execution of your strategy, delivering the right insights in an agile way, or making sure that basically all of my governance is in place in the right way, in terms of process efficiency as well as compliance. And that's, let's say, what probably in the past SAP was not really that well known for, something which we definitely wanted and needed to change to survive also in the market. And of course, let's say then you can think about, well, lowering TCO, so stuff like that, let's say having efficiency improvements. There's a ton load of business benefits, which basically we have been seeing coming out of, let's say, implementations of our SAP end-to-end finance platform, which actually is leveraging this cloud ERP approach combined with business AI and, let's say, this overall end-to-end business data fabric. At the right-hand side of the slide, you basically see just a couple of elements going into that different directions, let's say, from efficiency improvements and also accuracy improvements in budgeting, which is, of course, harder to measure than let's say, the efficiency improvements. Let's say, to the reduction in business and operations, and not only on operational activity, but also in, let's say, the execution of your analysis and reporting, all the way to, let's say, much more strategic, let's say, needs, which we needed to be answered. Let's say we have a number of cases where actually a complete acquisition has been kind of turned around in about 6 weeks. Meaning not necessarily all of the negotiations, that's not what I mean, but basically integrating the acquisition into the finance platform. Now, you don't need to, let's say, take my word for it, but we have, let's say, a lot of, let's say, of those benefits, let's say, detailed out in our database. So happy, let's say, to bring much more of that to the table if you would be interested into that. Now, of course, the center of everything is actually the endpoints of, let's say, the previous slide, and that's your single access point. That's a very important one. And not just from a look and feel perspective. Of course, let's say just the day-to-day experience is, of course, very important. We need to work on that. But actually, behind the user experience, let's say, which we have been launching kind of 10 years ago, and of course is still going under certain evolutions, it is much more than just a nice kind of look and feel. Actually, it has been the baseline for driving process automation. Taking a look at this one, and maybe it's not even a perfect example, but it's just a real life example. I'm just going to zoom into a couple of, let's say, a subpart of this, let's say, home screen of my receivables manager. Really, like, if I'm the receivables manager, basically I get certain information just at my fingertips upon opening my system. And if I then encounter, for instance, well, hopefully a pretty extreme case, which you don't bump into every day, but that your day sales outstanding is going through the roof, then you know, upon logging onto the system, that actually you have some actions to take. If this would be under control, no problem, then we can focus on something else. And isn't that really the optimal way of to optimize your time, to really get more efficient? Just dropping whatever task is not needed, only focusing on those elements which need your attention. And these 62 days, or basically, if you prefer to translate it into the percentage of overdue receivables, which in my extreme case is at 99.4%, is actually up-to-date information based on all of the individual transactions which have been recorded in my ERP system. Now, of course, in this case, I need to work on it. I need to handle complaints. I need to, let's say, run after those collections, and so on and so forth. And of course, let's say this user experience helps me there too. But there, let's say, looking at technological evolutions, we've basically been taking it even further than that. Just one example, let's say, imagine that you're part of your shared service organization, and there's a number of complaints that I need to track down. You really see here basically that a lot of pre-work has been done by the embedded AI capabilities that we are providing out of the box with our S/4HANA environment. So basically, there's every time something which is prepared. Of course, there's always the possibility for the business user to overrule. And if we want to dive into, okay, what has been now prepared, basically, you might be in a situation where some complaints, where disputes are coming out of the market of your customer base through email. So why not use AI to automatically analyze the email, pick up the right information, also get a sense of urgency, a sense of the sentiment behind, and actually also track down the related financial documents in a fully automated way, because these things just can be recognized. based on the document number, which might be referenced to the invoice number, which might be referenced. And then based on experience, basically, just like a human being would think, we can, let's say, also look into proposals done by the system to, let's say, well, let's say have some follow-up. First of all, creating a dispute case. So really structuring that very unstructured information in my system, and then start interacting actually with my embedded digital assistant, which is called Joule. You could, let's say, call it Siri or Alexa, or let's say Copilot from let's say our friends from Microsoft, to basically start then taking on the next steps. What is happening here is actually our digital assistant recognizes, let's say, similar cases and let's say what we have been done. So therefore, it's proposing a credit note to be sent out. Isn't that nice? Basically, I don't have to do the thinking anymore. Of course, like, yeah, still need to be on top of it because we're still in the people's business. So of course we need to do. And then of course, the last thing we need to do as well is inform our customer of, let's say, the decision that I've been making, which we can capabilities for. In this case, let's say some of the underlying large language models, which of course then I can then send out and track down the entire status on all of the activities for later use. Hopefully that's been interesting. And this is just, reality, which we can do. Now, the other element, and this is just one example, right, of, let's say, how we've been looking into really changing, adapting the user experience so that you don't have to click, but actually you can, in a natural way, interact with your system much more. And at the same time, that we can also leverage, let's say, all of these new technologies for, let's say, efficiency improvements. The second element, let's say, is really all about this business foundation. Let's say, and of course, this is not, well, not, let's say, well, this is kind of a theoretical slide, but hopefully you'll kind of recognize somehow your organization in this. And that doesn't mean that everybody needs to be really active in a, let's say, in the entire world. But what most of you probably will be facing is, let's say, you have a number of divisions, different entities. So basically, this is leading to, of course, intercompany activities. And you might even have a more complex supply chain than basically what is seen here on this page. What, from a performance management perspective, we always want to do is, of course, to maximize, let's say, my profits, which is basically your group view, at the same time optimizing your tax footprint, but also the new kid on the block, make sure that I'm hitting my sustainability targets. So instead of just balancing between maximizing profit and optimizing tax, you basically need to put three elements in our bucket, three angles into our bucket. So basically, we need to combine these different views. Looking at these different views from a finance angle, we could call that using different ledgers, which of course in itself is absolutely not a new concept within the SAP S/4HANA environments or in ERP overall. However, let's say if I want to link all of the aspects and all of the complexity of my supply chain into a financial view, I need to make sure that I have access to these multiple valuation principles, the group view, the tax view, for instance, across, let's say, the entire process. Whether I'm talking about, let's say, an asset under construction, let's say, which basically comes in place when I'm a production company and I'm setting up a new production line, all the way, let's say, to producing, and then also analyzing what's still in inventory and what I've been selling to my customers. And this is a little more of a technical screen, let's say, to illustrate that, yes, let's say this ledger concept is now available end-to-end, something which we call universal parallel accounting for those who would be interested. But it doesn't stop there, let's say, in, let's say, comparing those, let's say, two views, my managerial and my legal view. Actually, we do believe that in the era of sustainability, say this is becoming so quickly, so important that, let's say, that we believe that carbon, or let's say emission, or let's say environmental aspects, which typically are kind of mentioned in terms of tonnages, need to be treated in exactly the same way or very similar, like money, like your classic financial information. And that's, let's see, why we've been adding kind of another layer which we call our green ledger. The green ledger, which actually is making sure that we can treat for every single business transaction, we don't have just a debit credit posting from a financial perspective, but we also have an additional sustainability transaction debit credit posting, as you can actually see illustrated on the far right hand side of your slide. Is that an absolute, let's say, necessity right now? No. But let's say, well, this is, let's say, or the benefit of this is going way further than just, the legal requirements that, let's say, we might all need to get into. But really when I want to analyze, let's say, the performance and really, out between these three elements, this is really what is making this very interesting. For your information, the Green Ledger just got an which basically is yesterday. And let's say having access to that, of course, in the, let's say, at the end of the road, is allowing me to analyze not, let's say, only my financial, but also my emission information in exactly the same way. Let's say looking at it by product group, by whatever. Let's say here I'm looking at a car manufacturing company, let's say, where I can drill down into my P&L and just deep dive in whatever aspects, not only looking at the past, but also, as you see, let's say, I can look into the future with best case and worst case scenarios. And of course, from there, deep dive into that transactional detail, which I basically am seeing here. So this is a small illustration of this green ledger. That's basically one area. And let's say, looking at the time, I might have to speed up a little bit, but actually related to this, let's say, looking at steering effectiveness, providing the right information. Of course, it's one thing, let's say, to look at the actuals and balancing everything out. But of course, then comes also the simulation needs. Looking ahead, which actually brings me to one of the aspects of, let's say, enterprise performance management, which in our view is not just a concatenation of consolidation and planning and reporting capabilities, but really, let's say, if we want to get all of it, which, like, all the value out of this, should, let's say, be looked at as an end-to-end process. Actually, the process of managing the performance of your enterprise, which we completely support, not just, let's say, for one view, but actually answering three different views: the statutory reporting, the business steering, and our tax management view, which is kind of almost the same as, let's see, the elements that I mentioned before. Although before, basically, I was focusing more on, let's say, internal steering. So basically optimizing my business steering, making sure that from, let's say, a group controlling perspective, I have everything I need. And let's say balancing that out with my tax area. Of course, on top of that, we can't forget from this context, or within this context, the statutory reporting needs and the statutory, let's say, disclosures, basically. Now, these three swim lanes basically can also be translated into three types of personas or users: the head of accounting, the head of controlling, and my tax manager, which, of course, let's say, all three of them in a particular way need to run through this entire EPM process to make sure they have a clear view on planning across different and actuals across different entities, being able to also make the necessary cutoff on entity as well as on group level, which basically is enclose and consolidate, in order then to consume all of that information. And exactly the same applies, again, bringing sustainability in the same way. That's where actually today we're getting more and more questions coming from, like, for instance, the CFOs asking for, asking questions around, let's say, the possibility to consolidate, let's say, emission tonnages. Is that possible, SAP? Yes, that is actually possible. Why? Because we've been integrating this sustainability layer together with our financials, and, let's say, encapsulating that into an end-to-end process. Of course, let's say this is a very important and complex topic in itself. If you would like to know more about it, of course, we can, let's say, definitely have follow-ups to do that. The key element here is, let's say, we do have everything in place to maximize your group profit, optimize your tax footprint, and of course make sure also that we can help you from a data and from a process perspective to reach your sustainability goals. By providing kind of one data platform, this one data fabric, which basically is encapsulating everything across different valuation views, if you like, but also again, kind of similar to what we saw before on the operational side, by leveraging AI, making sure that we also plug help us steer the business in a more effective way. And let's see how we do that is, for instance, well, is in different ways. And like this is just a small snapshot of some of the capabilities. But what we don't want to invest time in anymore, or what we believe, let's say, you shouldn't be investing time in anymore, is in, let's say, creating all kinds of reports. We just talked about the single truth that we provide from a financial and from a sustainability perspective. Now, wouldn't it be nice, let's say, to again, in a human way, interact with my system to ask, let's say, to, for instance, provide me some financial statement model out of the box, which includes some of those elements you see there on top. What was the margin in last year, the income statement of 2023, and so on and so forth, looking at, let's say, some aspects that I want to integrate into my financial statements. The logical three, I would say, that I picked up here, comparing also that actual information with my budget, using the complete template that you might also already have been putting together, and then actually just generate that dashboard for me. I could have come with like a fantastic, very nice graphical thing. I didn't want to overdo it because basically we finance people, we're still like kind of down to earth from that perspective. So I didn't overdo it here. And basically this, but it is important to know that this, let's say, is a dashboard which is auto-created. And that's not where it ends. Actually, why not, let's say, integrate also, let's say, the possibility to start simulating. See, for instance, what the impact would be if I would assume that I'm reducing my cost by 2%. How is that impact the reports? Or if I want to look at, let's say, for instance, how the inflation rate and the evolution going forward of my inflation rate, something which I want to pick up from an external source, in this case from the World Bank, let's say, would be impacting my financial results. Something which I don't necessarily want to look into, let's say, from just a single scenario perspective, but have a pessimistic, a realistic, and an optimistic perspective based on my, let's say, assumptions. And of course, I can always, let's say, change around some of the drivers, which is basically what you saw me do very quickly at the left-hand side. Of course, again, this is just in like a 30-second little pitch on, let's say, the possibilities that we have, let's say, today within our enterprise performance management platform, and also showcasing that we have been embedding AI all over the place. Now, I know, let's say that we are sharp on time. So, of course, we couldn't really get into all of the different aspects, but I hope at least that I've been able to give you a little bit of a glimpse on, let's say, where SAP is today in terms of, well, user experience. The fact that it's much more than just a nice look and feel. And on the other side, let's say, making sure that I can provide whatever information is needed in my organization to take the right decisions, making sure I have actually time to do that by making my processes more efficiently. Think about, let's say, how I was handling my dispute cases. And of course, making sure I'm still compliant by embedding all of those governance and also risk related aspects deep into my day-to-day process execution. I didn't really show you something in that angle. Time was too short for that. But well, I would be very interested in sharing, let's say, more thoughts on this with you. My contact details are on the bottom left. And with that, I'm not sure whether there's questions or we have still time for questions. Otherwise, of course, we can also pick them up, and happy to come back to you with the answers in writing. So, well, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. What a fabulous presentation, thought leadership presentation. I want to thank, we are out of time, so I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event, excuse me. As a reminder, please do check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points to win a prize. And our next session will begin at 1:20 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will be a keynote presentation titled 1 + 1 = 3, Budgets. Dri- Budgets and Driving Motivation and Performance with Strategic Budgeting. Please click the join button that will appear on your screen to be directed to that session, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again, Michelle.
You're welcome.